Tonight on News 5 Live. In the Senate, a motion to extend the state of emergency for an additional 60 days passes. PUP Senator Michelle Shabat questions where the money gone in 30 days. The AG Michael Perifete questions the motives of the opposition. Will churches be declared essential services? We'll tell you what the AG says. A shooting incident in Dangriga leaves a man and a woman critically injured. And we'll hear from one of the biggest local companies how COVID-19 is challenging their business. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast. evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Tuesday, April 28th. I am Marlene Cuellar. The Senate today approved the motion to extend the state of emergency by an additional 60 days. Unlike sittings before the COVID-19 pandemic, at today's session, only 5 senators participated in the proceedings. Michelle Shabat represented the opposition's People's United Party. Minister Godwin Hull, Senate Attorney General Michael Parafit represented the government, and Senator Elena Smith presented on behalf of the social partners. At the House meeting on Monday, the opposition did not hold back and threw punches at the government. Today, lead opposition Senator Shabat took the cue and criticized the government, saying that for the past few weeks, the Belizean public has been suffering without jobs, money, and food.
We're here today to extend the state of emergency for 60 more days. But do you know what has happened these past 30 days? Let me tell you, and I will break it down, Mr. President, because I want even the children who are possibly listening to understand what has happened. Very simply, no job, which means no money, which means no food, which means, Mr. President, that people are hungry, and that means that people are desperate. Do you understand the gravity of this? No jobs, no money. Do you know what it means to be hungry? In this room? None of us know. None of us know. You could feed your family, I could feed my family. We know the feel that pain. But the people out there know what it means to be hungry. They know, Mr. President, and it is easy for us to come here and pass a law for 60 more days when we are failing to deliver basic food to the most needy of our people. For the last 14 days, the Ministry of Health has been saying that we have no new cases. So then, what is the justification for extending the state of emergency? The answer is simple. The Ministry of Health itself apparently does not believe in its own statistics. And that is why we're being asked to shut down for 60 more days. The Prime Minister said, no money no day. 1 month in, and no money no day. 30 days of state of emergency, and no more money there. Now, he wants us to extend for 60 more days. Well, where the money gone? At the beginning of the state of emergency, this Prime Minister spoke about a fund of $100 million, plus all the other tens and tens of millions of dollars that were being donated or obtained through the IFIs. So, again, where is the money? Where did the money go?
The Attorney General Michael Parafit rebutted the lead senator across the aisle. Parafit questioned the People's United Party's position on the motion, stating that the PUP in both the House of Representatives on Monday and during today's Senate sitting had the opportunity to challenge the motion by requesting an amendment.
You know why the PUP is mad? Because no money is being given out. No money. The Prime Minister made it very clear. COVID-19 is not for politics. No UDP representative, no UDP minister, no PUP standard bearer, no PUP representative will get any money. But the PUP may want money. They don't get the money, so now they're upset. You know where I make them happy? If the Prime Minister say, here is $50 million, now divide it amongst yourselves. That's what will make them happy. But they're not going to get that. And they're going to have to just continue to criticize all they want, because COVID-19 is not about politics. COVID-19 is about protecting the Belizean people. And since they're so interested in 30 days, since you know what the Prime Minister spoke about so much yesterday, If the leader of the opposition wanted it for only 30 days, he could have applied to amend the motion in the House. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't you, Senator Shabat, try to amend the motion in the Senate so it can be 30 days, if you are so interested in making it only 30 days? But you're not interested in making it 30 days. You're interested in grandstanding and trying to make the government look bad. That's all you're interested in. What is their position? Will they be in support of protecting the people of Belize, or will they vote no simply because the circumstances don't serve them well in this COVID-19? Even in COVID-19, the PUP wants to benefit. What a tragedy. The PUP is sicker than COVID-19.
Weighing in on the debate was Senator Elena Smith on behalf of the social partners, which includes the business community, churches, the NGO community, and unions. Today, Smith was measured, calling for a bipartisan approach to addressing COVID-19 and discouraged the want for grandstanding when people are hurting and need to preserve their dignity.
As Belizeans, going through this pandemic and looking at ways in which we can deal with or we can address the situation should have nothing to do with politics right now. This is not about red or blue, because COVID doesn't look at color or political affiliation. When somebody is hungry, it matters not what you say to them. They really don't want to hear any of those things. They want to hear about, how am I going to eat? But the fact of the matter is that there are many persons in our communities, including the government, who are helping our people with trying to get food to them. And yes, we have to be honest and we have to be open and we have to admit that we are not reaching to all the people or all the persons who need the help. If nothing else irks me is the fact that when people are giving people things, when you're helping them, you have to be posing with pictures to show that, oh, I am helping AG or I'm helping Senator Hulse, I'm giving them a bag of groceries. No, we don't do that to people. You help from the goodness of your heart. This is not a time to be grandstanding right now. This is a time to be collaborating, for us to see what we can contribute to the entire pool that will help this process a little, to make it a little bit easier.
The online portal for the Unemployment Relief Program was closed on Friday, April 24th. More than 80,000 applications for assistance were received, but less than half of that number was approved. There have been complaints that the government's effort to provide financial assistance to needy families has been sluggish. PUP Senator Michelle Shabat echoed that complaint today during the sitting of the Senate. Shabat says that thousands of Belizeans continue to wait for their food packages.
According to the Prime Minister, 88,000 people have applied for the unemployment benefit. That program, after 1 month, has now been closed. Of the 88,000 people, 33,771 applications have been approved, but only 23,680 have actually been paid out. Only 27% of those persons who have asked for help have actually received the help. Secondly, Mr. President, no food. No food. People have not been receiving the food packages they have been asking for. People don't have the money to go out and buy the food. They don't have jobs to get money. But yet, a month later, they're still waiting for the food packages, Mr. President. They have to either call Human Services or go online and fill out a form to see if they qualify to receive food. What is wrong with us? We have people waiting weeks and weeks to get an answer, and still, many of them are still waiting. Mr. President, I challenge this government to show us to show the people of Belize how they decide who gets a food package. People complain that they have not been receiving it, but yet they have seen supporters of the UDP getting.
What is the senator trying to say when there's no food? Just because it's a soundbite? You have the best distribution of food in this country going on right now to bridge the gap between those who got displaced because of COVID-19. And are people just to line up and fleece the system? No, when you're asking for financial assistance, you must qualify. You must qualify. So some people don't qualify for the COVID financial assistance, and some people genuinely do. We have to give a priority to those who genuinely do. So what exactly is the complaint of the PUP? What are they really driving at? Since this thing come, we have 18 cases, only 10 remain positive. What exactly is your problem? Really? You will get a lot more respect if you just say you want the money in your hand, you know.
Senator Michelle Chabot decried in the Senate that the politicization of the food programs to needy families during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. This afternoon, the PUP said it was disappointed at the closure of the government's unemployment relief fund last Friday. According to a release, below 50% of those who applied had not received any assistance, and thousands more are waiting to get the $200 or $300 to make ends meet. In respect of the food programs, 8,000 of the 31,000 applicants were approved, representing only a fraction of those who applied. Thousands of families are still clamoring for food, even though it has now come to light that $10 million have been set aside for the program. The PUP also notes that COVID-19 is revealing the real unemployment figures, which do not correspond to the touted figures by the government. It states, quote, "This is less the doing of any COVID-19 pandemic and more the result of systemic governance failure, chronic corruption, and unchecked gluttony by those trusted to lead the nation," unquote. The opposition party also denounces the decision to reject offers from organizations such as the Belize Red Cross to assist at a time when relief must not be tied to politics. Even as the Unemployment Relief Fund has closed to new applications, hundreds of affected Belizeans are still lining up, hoping they get assistance. On Monday morning in Corozal Town, the line to the Social Security Board on 7th Avenue was snaking for about a mile as men and women waited under very hot temperatures to collect their debit cards to be able to access the funds. Corozal has been severely affected due to the closure of the Corozal Free Zone and the casinos, where about 1,000 were employed. Hundreds others lost their jobs in the local tourism industry as well as in San Pedro. COVID-19 has wreaked economic havoc, leaving families in dire straits. The Guatemalan government was granted by the International Court of Justice a 6-month extension to submit its memorial on its maritime and territorial claim to Belize. Guatemala cited the COVID-19 pandemic, which presented challenges to prepare for its submissions. Belize's attorneys objected to Guatemala's request, proposing instead a 2-month extension, but the ICJ went in favor of a 6-month extension. This means that Belize would file its counter-memorial in June 2022. We asked the Attorney General Michael Perifete for comment.
It is what it is. The court has granted the extension, so we will leave it at that. I don't want to, I generally do not speak about matters in process in court. This is the most important court matter this country has ever had, and I will not start with this one. So the court has made a decision to grant the extension. That's it.
But in what case did Belize's lawyers object to Guatemala's request?
The court has granted the extension, brother. That's it.
There's more news after the break, so stay tuned.
Hello, friends. This is Dr. Bob
A shooting incident in Dangriga on Monday night has left 2 persons hospitalized with gunshot injuries. Frederick Coote and Tamira Nunez were attacked inside a residence sometime around 8 p.m., just about curfew time, when multiple shots were fired at the house. Coote was struck by a bullet to the chest, while Nunez was injured in the thigh. It is unknown what led to the armed assault at Coote's home, but Dangriga police were able to move swiftly in detaining several persons. With a report from Dangriga, here is our media colleague, Harry Arzu.
Shortly after 8 o'clock last night, amid the curfew associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, shots were fired in the second news site area of Dangriga. Reporters say that the home of a family was shot upon just when they were about to have supper. Southern Belize media visited the family home on Dashin Street and spoke with one of the family members, who told us that one of their relatives, who was in the upper flat of the lumber house, sustained a single gunshot wound to the right side of his body. He has been identified as 23-year-old Frederick Coote. Coote was then rushed to the Southern Regional Hospital last night, where he is still being treated for his wound. He spoke with us.
Me exact 8, soon as the siren gone off. But everybody right upstairs because I don't know a curfew or anything, right? So, but my little brother get shot after they saved the little baby. Soon as they grab the little girl and drop with her, and then he get shot right in the side. If he never get that shot there, the little girl may get that. And my next little daughter, they walk right there in the house and shot the fire over the little baby the head there.
So how many people in the house last night? How many people had in the house?
Upstairs, at least 10 people. Me upstairs with the picnic, 5 kids.
So this happened upstairs?
Upstairs.
Tell us more or less why you think people might be shooting here, more or less.
I don't really know, but everybody have their own personal problem. Did
you guys call the police? No, call the police?
Yes, the police called like me say 15 minutes after, soon as I came my brother on my cycle. And come pick up my girl after, because my brother is more serious.
Yeah. Tell us your full name.
Frederick Coote.
Okay, how old are you?
23.
Tell us what happened at your area last night.
I'm in a room, in my bed, and my next to the bed. I'm up on my phone for Facebook. So I got a gunshot. I jump out of the bed and got my knees. I don't jump out of the bed now, I go upstairs and feel so warm. My body state time, my sister now they run outside. Like, she have to pass her in the room quietly. But that's how she get hit past, she said. There's some more gunshot to start and things rapidly.
Say again?
Alright, there's a lot more gunshot start.
So they were shooting from outside the house? Outside the yard? Outside the yard?
Yeah.
But how many, did you get hit? You get hurt?
Yeah, I get hit.
What part are you?
And on my right arm, at the bottom by my chest. It's out to my stomach. Bullet there.
So it's large right there right now?
Yep.
So what the doctor is saying?
Say maybe later tomorrow.
Last night, police visited the scene where they retrieved several expended shells and now have several persons in their custody pending their investigation.
The number of active coronavirus infections has been reduced tonight to 7. And the latest figures from the Ministry of Health show that 26 are under investigation. It means that at least for now, there is improvement, but still Belizeans are not expected to put their guard down. Earlier this week, Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero confirmed to News 5 that the ministry has experienced delays in obtaining swabs and reagents for continued testing for the novel coronavirus. Almost 1,000 tests have been carried out so far, and according to Dr. Manzanero, there are enough testing materials for the next 2 weeks. During today's sitting of the Senate, the PUP's Michelle Shabat pointed out, however, that Belize has been waiting for equipment and materials for weeks, and they have yet to arrive.
We have been lucky so far, but thinking about it, I wonder if it's luck or if it is just that we have not been testing enough. What are the facts as we know them? 1, we don't have enough PPEs for medical frontline workers. That's a fact. we still do not have established treatment protocols. Mr. President, we don't have enough swabs and reagents to conduct the necessary testing 30 days later. We don't have enough testing kits. And yet, we refused a gift of 25,000 kits. And not even with the money we have can we now buy them. For the past week, few, if any, testing has been done because we have been guarding the little we have. It seems, Mr. President, and from hearing the DHS yesterday, it seems that we have not been able to acquire sufficient swabs and reagents. And if you recall, Mr. President, from WHO to all of these international health organizations, the international standard for dealing with COVID-19 is test, test, test. When I hear our Prime Minister speaks, it reminds me of that television series, and I am a bit older than you, Mr. President, so maybe you won't remember it, but a series called Fantasy Island, I'm sure the AG will recall, in which the character at the start says, "The plane, the plane." We have been hearing about the plane coming with more tests and supplies, but the plane can't land yet, Mr. President. But we're asking for 60 more days.
When you listen to the opposition, and when you listen to Minister, Senator, maybe his dream, Senator Shabat, when you listen to Senator Shabat, and we're not testing enough, and the statistics are not this, don't you get the feeling that the PUP almost wish that the COVID-19 situation was so much worse than it is? It's like they're almost upset that we have it under control. They've been dying to have it go so bad so that the government and Dean Barrow can be blamed. But lo and behold, we have proven once again that we can tackle anything that faces this government. You have to display the symptoms before we even test you. So stop sending this foolishness to the public that you must just go out there and just test everybody. That's not how the process works for COVID-19. Those are not the guidelines of PAHO. Those are not the guidelines of the WHO, of nobody. You don't go about randomly testing people for COVID-19. You have to display the symptoms. Stop spreading foolishness.
Although the number of active cases is now down to 7, there has been a persistent call for the Ministry of Health to begin using rapid testing kits in detecting COVID-19 among persons exhibiting flu-like symptoms. Those tests, it is argued, will significantly reduce the time taken to determine the coronavirus status of persons. However, Minister of Health Pablo Marin contends that the results of those tests are unreliable. According to Marin, a second testing machine is being procured despite an existing capacity of 200 tests being administered daily.
That rapid test cannot work. There's a lot of false negative. PAHO WHO hasn't confirmed of any lab that is or any test that we can say yes. I had a meeting last week with PAHO and Central America. Everybody's saying, you know what, just hold on the rapid test. Let's hope that there's one of them that will be available soon. But as it is, we only are doing the normal test.
So, sir, with the testing equipment currently in country, how many people can we test?
We can test, according to what they mentioned to us, up to 200 tests per day.
Per day for how many days?
We can go on, but we are trying to get a new machine for us to have 2 in country, so we can rest one and use the next one.
The trans-border trade of livestock between Belize and Guatemala remains at an indefinite standstill now that Cabinet has decided to halt the informal trade that has been flourishing for decades. And despite a formal trade agreement with Mexico, cattle is yet to be exported via the Santa Elena crossing. On Monday, the Prime Minister said that the government will be exploring other options. While on the issue of cattle exportation, the Prime Minister also spoke briefly on the abrupt resignation of Chief Executive Officer Jose Alpuche, who tendered his letter of notice to the Ministry of Agriculture last week.
Mexico, with whom we've been trying to work for ages, according to the minister, that's now all there except they're wanting us to use just one particular corral at Blue Creek. And the minister wanted for, as it were, each cattle ranch to be certified and sanitized and for pickups to be done from individual cattle ranches. He's agreed with me, or we've agreed that we can't wait on that. I was told that as well, most of the livestock is at Shipyard, and there may be some little difficulty between Shipyard and Blue Creek. I don't know if that is true, but if it is, that surely can be sorted out. Point is that there are other options. Nothing will be quite as sweet to the farmers as the illegal trade, because remember that nobody was paying any government official on either side of the border a dime. So for all the reasons I've outlined, it can't continue. But we clearly have a duty to try to find alternatives, and that is what the Ministry of Agriculture is making every effort to do.
Are you able to speak about the resignation of the CEO?
No, except that I got the copy of the letter. I haven't had a chance to speak to him since then, but his minister tells me that he's still working like the Dickens to ensure that business gets done between now and when he leaves. That's as much as I know.
CEO Alpuche gave the required 3 months' notice on his resignation. The matter was also raised today during the Senate hearings by Senator Shabat. But on leaving the Senate, Alpuche's substantive boss, Minister of Agriculture Godwin Holtz, did not wish to confirm the motive for the CEO's sudden departure. Here's how that went in the Senate.
Didn't the CEO in the Ministry of Agriculture just resign over the debacle of the exportation of cattle and pigs?
A point of order.
Yes, Attorney General.
Senator Shabat asked if he could refer to his notes, but Senator Shabat is reading. Anybody could type up one speech and come read, you know, Mr. President. You're supposed to stand on your feet and debate.
Yes, AG.
I guess the AG doesn't like to hear what I'm saying, Mr. President. And
I want to put on the record that I, as the Minister for Food and Agriculture, that's how the ministry is properly named, Food and Agriculture and Immigration, do not have any knowledge, and I don't think it is a fact, even though we have heard it in the media, that my CEO has resigned over cattle export into Guatemala. I will say that because, Mr. President, we have worked well together in that ministry. I have an excellent, outstanding team who continue to work continuously through this period.
After the break, COVID-19 has been impacting the economy. We'll tell you what one of the biggest employers in the country is doing as production drops. Globally, COVID-19 is having an impact on life as well as on the business environment in significant ways. The Bowen & Bowen Group has a workforce of over 1,200 employees, and it is one of the largest employers in the production of alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. The virus does not discriminate and has been hitting businesses big and small. The company's CEO, Michael Bowen, says that they have had to take various measures to cut costs, but not staff, to stay ahead of the virus. Here is News 5's Dwayne Moody with this report.
Like all other businesses, COVID-19 has posed challenges to the Bowen & Bowen Limited and Companies. One of the larger employers in the country, Bowen & Bowen has over 1,200 persons employed across its various businesses. CEO Michael Bowen says that the company has experienced a 60% dip in its revenues for beverages, and the projection is not promising because one of its biggest customers, the tourism industry, has shuttered.
Month to date, we're down 60% in the beverage business. Across the board, I think we are deflected off our top line cumulative earnings about 15%, but that's going to continue growing as we have a deficit for the next few months. We're expecting, we budgeted a forecast, a COVID forecast of this month and next month of 60% down in sales, and then 40% thereafter through the Q3. And then Q4 depends on whether tourism starts to come back or some more regulations, but that's our prediction through the year.
Fortunately, the private company has not cut down on its employees, but the staff had to take a pay cut to ensure the survival of the business. Overhead cost-cutting measures have also been put in place.
We have not committed any reduction in headcount. We're committed to our staff. We've been communicating on a daily basis with our leadership team, and a weekly basis. We have a company-wide town hall. We've also opened up a suggestion box. We want and soliciting feedback from all of our staff and all the members, as well as their concerns. It's amazing how the team has pulled together to understand, for the safeguard of everybody, that yes, there have been some austerity motions. We've been doing some cost savings, but these cost savings have actually come from suggestions from staff, as well as even the ideas of how to reach our customers. And you might have seen that we've actually implemented a home sale delivery system, which we hadn't done for years, as part of this effort. But our commitment is to our staff and to maintain them. What we did was ask staff to take their vacation during that period. So in the beverage company, about 75% of the staff was on vacation. And only 25% was coming in. And that was kind of ubiquitous across all the companies, whether it was in food distribution or police estate. We asked staff to take their vacation, so they were able to be fully paid through that period.
Under the initial state of emergency, the company was restricted in the sale of alcoholic beverages and carbonated drinks. It was only allowed to produce and distribute crystal water. But even so, water sales were down. CEO Michael Bowen spoke about some of the trends that the company experienced.
The first week, we were restricted to only selling water through our distribution systems. So the trucks would go out to the customers and we could only deliver water. However, through the stores that we have at our sales centers, we were still able to deliver and sell soft drinks and beer, but that was all by pickup and it had to be pre-ordered for picking. The second week, it opened up and we could sell soft drinks and beer, but we weren't able to produce more soft drinks and beer. So this week we're trying to catch up with some of the inventory because based on the regulations changing on Saturday, we have been able to open the factories again. Beer has been our hardest hit. With all on-premise locations being closed, so restaurants have no dine-in services, bars and clubs have been closed. That's an entire channel and occasion that has essentially stopped. So some restaurants, even if they're doing takeout, don't necessarily sell alcohol or drinks with their takeout orders. So people are having to pick it up from the stores. But as you know, stores are limiting the amount of people that can go in, and also therefore people are restricting the amount of visits they're doing to stores. So overall, it's just harder to get, and people with less money in their pocket are just buying more staples and the basics. I don't know exactly on the specifications on hoarding, but certainly the demand went up. And of course, with 5 gallon is where the major demand went. And when people buy a few extra bottles that are not expected in our forecast, those bottles stay home and we don't have them to refill. So we had to place special and emergency orders to get more bottles in so that we can actually fulfill the demand, because people just had more in their homes rather than having those bottles flow through the system like they would normally do. So we got those bottles, we've been filling demand. Some of the restricted production hours have made it hard to continue meeting it, but we're doing what we can to satisfy the demand in the market.
Bowen says that while this year's extended drought will cause some demand for water, COVID-19 will continue to lower consumer demand. Dwayne Moody for News 5.
In the Senate today, PUP Senator Michelle Shabbat shared the contents of a letter written by the Senator for the non-governmental organizations on behalf of the Belize network of NGOs. The letter, dated April 27th, was addressed to the National Oversight Committee, which is chaired by Prime Minister Dean Barrow and Opposition Leader John Briceño. In the letter, BNN tells the Oversight Committee that it supports the 60-day extension of the state of emergency, during which a recovery plan and process are to be formulated. The BNN called for the implementation of new measures, including laws post-COVID-19.
In truth and in fact, we are all stakeholders. We all have an interest in surviving this COVID-19 and all the implications thereof. But the sad part, Mr. President, is that this government is using this pandemic for its own benefit instead of for all the people of Belize. What we need is the truth. We need all the facts. And we need the Minister of Health to step up, Mr. President. If he is not able to do it, if he feels that he does not have the ability, then perhaps it is time to give way to someone who does.
In the letter, the NGO says that it was agreed that this decision, as well as the suggested way forward, would have been shared with and reviewed by the Oversight Committee prior to public release, which had been scheduled for Friday, April 24, 2020. It complains that if the committee does not so do, it will hinder cooperation, coordination, and trust, now that the letter was leaked and formed a part of Shabbat's presentation in the Senate. NGO Senator Osmani Salas, who was absent from today's proceedings, spoke with News 5 earlier today, clarifying that the letter was only intended for the PM and his co-chair.
I heard my colleague, Senator Shabbat, read out portions of the letter in the Senate meeting earlier today. I think it was very disingenuous on his part to do so, and I believe he did that trying to build on the partisan agenda that he was trying to present at the Senate this morning. Our letter, which is the fourth in a series to the co-chairs of the COVID-19 National Oversight Committee, was not intended to go public. Our letter was addressed to the co-chairs, the Prime Minister, and the Leader of the Opposition, and it was copied to our NGO Network Steering Committee, our representative on the COVID-19 National Oversight Committee, Mr. Andre Carrillo, and myself. It's not the first time. As I said, it's the fourth time that we have presented such a letter with our recommendations to the National Oversight Committee. Our representative is very engaged at the National Oversight Committee and debriefs us after each meeting. We meet prior to each meeting, so he has the full support of the BNN CRA committee. So the engagement goes both ways. So whenever we send letters to the co-chairs, it's to help the process, the COVID-19 response process, and our representative at that committee. That essentially has been the intention with our letters. And as I've mentioned before, whenever we want to make anything public, we issue a press statement or a press release.
The focus on the House meeting on Monday was related to the state of emergency, which will continue for another 2 months. But the House heard that in the first 30 days, families across the land have endured hardships due to COVID-19. Both Cordell Hyde and Julius Espat spoke on the plight of families. Here is News 5's Isani Caetano with this report.
A 60-day extension for the state of emergency comes into force on May 1st. with the motion being tabled during a special sitting of Parliament on Monday morning. The meeting of the House of Representatives was rather unusual, as the floor was reduced to a total of 7 elected officials. Gone were supporters of both political parties who, up until then, had remained fixtures in the galleries. The order of the day was the introduction of a single motion.
Madam Speaker, I move, whereas Section 18(2) of the Belize Constitution provides that the Governor-General may, by proclamation, which shall be published in the Gazette, declare that a state of public emergency exists for the purposes of Part 2 of the Constitution. And whereas Section 18(3) of the Belize Constitution provides that, in order to have effect, the proclamation must contain a declaration of the Governor-General that he is satisfied that a public emergency has arisen as a result of the outbreak of inter alia infectious disease.
And that highly contagious disease is the new coronavirus 2019, which, despite relatively low numbers of infection in Belize, continues to wreak havoc on the local economy. The motion to extend the SOE, however, was met with resistance by the opposition, who maintains that relief during the present state of emergency was slow to come, making an additional 60 days extremely difficult for most households.
A lot of people had a rough Easter, you know, because that money take one while to reach even for the 28,000. In fact, going into Easter, nobody no get it. And just get a good word that it was approved. Man, even though we can't go nowhere, we can't go to Placencia or Chetomal or Kikaka, Easter wired in a way. So for that 4 or 5 days, you want to eat with cross bun. You want to eat one good Easter Sunday dinner. You want to feel like we, but that money not reach, Madam Speaker.
In identifying the challenges that residents in the rural communities continue to face, Cayo South Area Representative Julius Espat pointed to the hardships of his constituents getting food to their respective villages.
The poor rural residents are trying their best, but it is not enough. The food is not reaching. And if I am complaining and our villages are close to Belmopan, imagine. Some of them are farmers, not all of them are farmers. But you see how they think, Madam Speaker? The villagers, the farmers, don't worry about them. Now, yes, we have an advantage. That the rural people are proud people, and for the longest, in fact, from history, they have had the knowledge, the common sense, and the opportunity to be able to feed themselves. So that's a great advantage during this crisis. Second advantage is that we are not living as close to each other as maybe the residents of the urban areas.
PM Barrow, in wrapping up the meeting, explained that there is no need for citizens to become frantic over another SOE coming into effect.
The member for Lekai was absolutely right when he said people should not cringe at the thought of a further lockdown. No, they should not, because the continuation of the state of emergency for 2 months does not mean that they will necessarily be locked down for 2 months. 2 things. The Constitution makes clear, and the recital, part of the recitals to the motion, makes clear that you can come back to Parliament at any time, and by way of a simple resolution, you can bring an end to the state of emergency. But more than that, the state of emergency, the extension of the state of emergency, the original proclamation by the Governor-General, these things are enabling measures. The proclamation enables a state of emergency, but what is critical is the regulations passed under the state of emergency.
Those regulations will be spelled out on Thursday during another episode of Ask the Experts. Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
There's more news after the break, so stay tuned.
B&B
A sum of $12,000 was handed over to the Belize Red Cross from the diplomatic community and the international organizations accredited to Belize. The diplomatic community here is small and their countries have also been hit hard. But the gesture is significant to assist families facing financial difficulties as a result of COVID-19. A release from the Office of the Dean, Ambassador Carlos Quesnel from Mexico, recognizes the efficient, transparent, and impartial disbursement of resources by the Belize Red Cross. The Dean also recognizes the remarkable show of support to help the families. Bowen & Bowen Limited and companies are making a $500,000 donation to the Ministry of Health to assist in the fight against COVID-19. Since March, when there was the impending threat of the novel coronavirus, the company had pledged to assist the government. But there have been delays in getting 8 ventilators, among other medical supplies, including surgical masks and personal protective equipment in country. Today, CEO Michael Bowen had an online interview with the press where he announced that a first set of supplies, specifically 20 hospital beds with mattresses and 5,000 surgical masks, will be handed over to the Ministry of Health.
What we have right now is 20 hospital beds and the 5,000 face masks that are arriving and will be delivered this week. And then on May 8th and May 15th is the 8 ventilators, the 10,000 COVID tests, and then as well as the PPEs, the face mask, and the bodysuits with boots.
And how are you sure that these meet the standards that the Ministry of Health requires and needs?
So when we contacted the vendors, we got the specifications of each of the items. We shared those specifications with the DHS and the Ministry of Health for them to verify that these items were meeting the standards that they require.
In a recent interview, Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero told News 5 that there had been issues with the procuring of medical supplies, namely swabs and reagents to test for COVID-19. Although most had been paid for, the supplies were delayed by the U.S., which is restricting the exportation of medical supplies and equipment. Dr. Manzanero also confirmed that there were only about 2 weeks of testing material remaining in stock, and there is an urgency to replenish. Well, Bowen & Bowen is donating 10,000 COVID-19 testing reagents, which is critical at this time. Those and 8 AMV-70 ventilators are to arrive in Belize on May 8th and 15th, respectively. CEO Michael Bowen, after consultation with the Ministry of Health and the Director of Health Services on specs, says the company was able to source the medical supplies from other countries.
It was tough because of the fact that with the U.S. regulations right now, they don't allow the re-exportation of these health items because they're being held back for the U.S. Health Services. So we had to go through different sources. I think these are all coming through Mexico. And it's been taking a little while because of that regulations in the United States where you can't even ship through the United States, actually. So items coming in from a vendor that's outside, lands in the U.S., they will not re-export it.
So how much of a headache was that sourcing it from Mexico rather than through traditional channels that you all may be used to?
Well, it wasn't so much of a headache as much as a delay in time. So these would have been here earlier if it wasn't for the fact that we had this difficulty in the re-exportation of it. So some of the items are here and the rest of the items will arrive on May 8th and May 15th.
Educators across the country, those whose salaries are covered by government, will be paid on April 29th, along with other public officers. The unusually tardy payday is a result of monies having to be allocated by government amid the economic hardships stemming from the COVID-19 crisis. Following Monday's special sitting of the House of Representatives, Mesopotamia Area Rep. Michael Finnegan weighed in briefly on the late payment.
Teachers are good, intelligent, and sensible people. And I can vouch for that, and I am very supportive of them. There are thousands of people out there who will get no pay at all, who will never see our money in months to come. Thank God teachers will be able to see their money and see their money in full, but a few days late. Thank God for teachers, and thank God they are getting their payday, and teachers are sensible people.
Coming up after the break, will the churches be considered essential? We'll tell you what the Attorney General says.
A port with a global perspective.
Time is quickly running out for Gas Tomza Limited, Southern Choice Butane, Zeta Gas, and Belize Western Energy Limited to continue in business. That is because the Supreme Court has ruled against the LPG importers who were seeking an interim injunction that would have allowed them to continue in the business past April 30th. Last week, Acting Chief Justice Michelle Arana denied the injunction to restrain the government from refusing to issue licenses to these companies. As you know, the government has shares in the new National Gas Company, which has been granted a 15-year exclusive importation license. Attorney Audrey Matura has now filed a notice of appeal to the Court of Appeal, which she is being pushed to be heard, which she is pushing to be heard ahead of Thursday.
The reason we had to file an injunction is because the claimants got a letter from government on the 28th of February saying we will not give you any more importation license. So we then went for this injunction. The injunction was denied. There were different reasons that the court gave for denying the injunction, although the court held that there is a serious case to be tried on the constitutional matter. So the update to that is that we are now filing, or we have filed, a notice of appeal. I have the receipt right here. We filed a notice of appeal to the Court of Appeal. However, we are waiting for a date, and of course we are applying to have it heard immediately, simply because it's a matter of urgency, because come the end of this month there will be no more importation license to the claimants.
In her ruling last week, Justice Michelle Arana was of the view that there exists issues to be resolved by the court in a pending constitutional claim. Attorneys for the importers are relying on the rights of the importers to freely conduct business, and that by denying them a license, the government is violating the Constitution.
The reason we have a constitutional case before the court is very simple. Under the Constitution, Section 15, and other sections that we're also relying on, Section 15 says that you have the right to work in any field you want, in any trade, any business you want. It's right here in our Constitution, right here at Section 15. And if that right is violated, you can go to the court. The claimants, the LPG company is saying, I have the right to operate freely as an LPG importer. The government, however, is violating that right, we're saying, by creating a monopoly company. The monopoly company is the National Gas Company. But not only have they created a monopoly company and saying that from now on nobody else could import LPG, only this company. In doing that, we're saying it's a violation, and we're saying it's more than just a violation. The Belizean public should be worried, because when you create that monopoly now, the same thing that is happening right now at the gas pumps, where the government controls the price and there's only one person bringing fuel, and no matter how low the price goes, the government refuses to give you cheaper fuel. That's the same thing they want to create right now with butane. And the reason they want to create that with butane is that once they have one company doing all the importation, they can do that. Under the legislation creating the monopoly, at Section 7, the government made it clear, your monopoly company, the National Gas Company, will not be paying any taxes. Not environmental tax, not income tax, not GST, not land tax, not exchange control tax, absolutely no taxes. So for 15 years, this company, who will have full control as to what they import of butane and the prices along with the government, they will control that. Will not only control that, but will not be paying taxes. The present companies, there are 6 companies importing LPG right now. Those companies pay all those taxes. That's revenue the government will lose. So the case is more than just their constitutional right. So they're also bringing a claim under Section 6 of the Constitution, which says that you have the right to be treated fairly and equally under the law, the equal protection of the law. Right now, the Monopoly Law, Act number 12 of 2019, is only giving special protection to the National Gas Company and not to the others.
Responding to the LPG importers today was Attorney General Michael Parafit. As mentioned, Gas Tomza Limited, Southern Choice Butane, Zeta Gas, and Belize Western Energy Limited have decided to appeal the ruling of Acting Chief Justice Michelle Arana, who denied the companies an interim injunction to tie the government's hand. Parafit would not comment in detail because the matter is still before the court.
Well, I don't know. We will find out when we go to the Court of Appeal. We will make our arguments, and the Court of Appeal will decide how it sees fit.
The Alliance of Ministers and Leaders of Belize is petitioning the government to reconsider the position of the church as it relates to the state of emergency. The clergy is not listed as an essential service, and many churches across the country have found new ways to conduct praise and worship sessions. But the Alliance of Ministers and Leaders of Belize, under the leadership of Patrick Menzies, is asking the government to declare members of the clergy as essential workers on the basis that ministering to the spiritual needs of the nation is an essential service. Menzies says that normal religious services can be conducted safely if measures are put in place and adhered to. But Attorney General Michael Parafit isn't convinced.
I think God bless me with good sense and know that we can worship God and praise God without necessarily endangering ourselves with a disease. I think we have to find creative ways to do things. The simple fact of the matter is that we cannot be too close together with this disease at this time right now in the country. It's just simply too dangerous. And, well, I don't know about your God, but my God is very understanding. And if I die from COVID-19 because I'm stupid, he will be very disappointed that I didn't use the sense he gave me.
Around the world and in Belize, the churches have been using the internet to continue to connect with their flock, and in so doing, they have been supporting and adhering to social distancing guidelines. And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us, and from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, stay home, and stay safe. Good night.